Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about the global launch of Torchlight Infinite. Now, in case you haven't been following this channel, I've been playing this game on and off for the last 5 months or so. It is my go-to game whenever I'm burned out of Path of Exile. At this point, I've around about 1,000 hours in the game, and it was in closed beta for quite a while, then it was in open beta, and now we finally have the release date, which is the 9th of May. Now, usually when people ask me, is this worth my time? It is free to play, but obviously time is still a factor, and I usually say, if you're, for example, somebody who plays Path of Exile in softcore, you like fast-paced gameplay, you like a variety of builds, you like quality of life improvements, a game that is very friendly towards your wrists, stuff like that, then this is the game for you. But if you care more about the meticulous gameplay, you're like a hardcore player, then this will probably not be for you. And I draw this distinction because this is really one of those first ARPGs that draw inspiration from Path of Exile rather than the Diablo series. But it tries to improve on certain systems and certain clunkiness that PoE has with it. It is also a lot more intricate than you might think on first glance. The whole aesthetic, for me personally, it's not that big of a problem because I played Torchlight 2 when I grew up. So for me, it's not all about like skeletons and this gritty feeling. That is not necessarily what I'm looking for in an ARPG. I just basically look for deep systems. But yeah, whether you want to give it a try or not, that is up to you. Something I want to point out is that this video is sponsored by XD, which are the devs of this game. If you think that clouds my judgment, you can also check out my review from 5 months ago whenever it wasn't sponsored, or just choose another content creator of your choice. Also, huge shout out to the Torchlight Maxroll branch. It kind of released, I think, 3 months ago. I'm not directly affiliated with their branch. I'm still only working on Path of Exile, but I've seen quite a few of their stuff, and it's definitely worth checking out, whether you are a new player, whether you need some build guides or currency advice. In this video, I want to talk about stuff I liked, stuff I think is still lacking, and that has to be implemented over time. Overall, I think they did a great job kind of tidying up the game for release. They've really come a long way. But with that said, let's see what we get for global release and what's new. First up, there is a new season mechanic called Cube of Rapacity. Now, we don't know that much about this mechanic right now. Basically, what I'm gleaning from this is there are these rare encounter monsters that you have to kill throughout the map, and then at the end, you kind of get this... you also have a passive tree, right? So there's this passive tree that you can fill out and kind of accustom what rewards you will get at the end. But in general, you will be able to roll for certain currency at the end of the map, depending on how many of these monsters you've defeated, which sounds pretty interesting. And yeah, from the rewards I can see here, this might be quite interesting. This also plays into one of the new mechanics that they're going to release, which is this new Tetris passive tree. Usually you can choose 3 different passive trees in this game. In this case, the guy has Goddess of Deception, Shadow Master, and Psychic. And down here, there's a 4th one, which is supposed to be this new tree right here. And basically, you can craft these pieces that you can then fill in, and that gives you certain bonuses. We don't know exactly what this is going to be, but it reminds me quite a bit of the idol system in Last Epoch, which I'm a fan of, so good idea. We then have one completely new character, which is called Escapist Bing, which looks like kind of this trapper, miner slash bomb thrower. It looks kind of cool. The playstyle looks very zoomy, and it seems like cast speed will kind of enhance the way you throw these, so you can throw them pretty damn fast. It might be a lot less clunky than, for example, a trapper, a miner, and PoE. I really hope so, at least from the gameplay. It looks pretty solid. Then we have a new Thea talent tree with Incarnation of the Gods. And the way this is supposed to work is you still scale blessings like you do with Thea normally, but they have different effects now. Now, from what I've heard so far, it seems a little bit underwhelming, kind of like a support class. I'm not really sure if that's true. I really hope not. It kind of incentivizes this gameplay style where you're either in the circle or outside the circle. Inside the circle, you take a lot less damage, but deal less damage as well, and vice versa if you're outside it, which I don't think is really made for a fast-paced game like Torchlight, but we'll have to see. Then we have some new skills, like, for example, Thunder Spike right here. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's 10 or more. A few things I want to talk about. Aside from the normal melee and spells, we also have a lot of new totem-like abilities, like, for example, this Ghost Blade right here. It's basically like a totem that you put down and it shoots daggers. And I think that's actually something that Torchlight desperately needed, something like a bossing ability that you throw down at bosses and you're just going to slay them, because a lot of builds felt like they have good clear, but then you get to the boss and your options are kind of limited. So I'm really liking how this looks. There's also some new stuff for minions. There was definitely a problem where there's not enough variety inside minion builds, and you're not really incentives to press that many buttons or do anything at all. With this Grim Phantom, you have new minions that you can summon, so you kind of have more of like decision making what you want to go for. As well as that, they talked about wanting to incentivize you to actually regroup your minions and press certain buttons. There's like a new stat but we'll have to see how that goes. Then we have a new mechanic called Spell Burst, which I'm personally incredibly hyped by. It's basically like Unleash in PoE, but you don't have to press any buttons. It gets triggered automatically. So as I understand, that is supposed to buff some of the spellcasters, which had quite a big problem where they would usually struggle at single target damage or just in general against bosses because you can't really stand still for prolonged times. So they would always fall off against other builds who just trigger stuff. Then we have a complete overhaul to crafting, and I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that. I actually really like the crafting system in Torchlight Infinite. I always felt like it was one of the selling points of the game. It has very deterministic crafting, and that is still a thing apparently, but now it's going to work a little bit differently. So whereas before you would just roll over and over again, you can always go back to what you had before. So you can't really brick your items. Now there's sort of this new stat called plasticity, and it is going to determine how often you can actually reroll your items. Now, at the same time, they're also introducing something else where you can lock in certain mods and they cannot be overwritten, which I think could be really OP. But in general, what they said is they want to make it easier early game to craft, and they want to make it harder to get like perfect items, which I think is a good thing overall. It's always nice to have something to strive for, as long as the game doesn't get harder by the power level of items going down. That's totally fine. But with the new Tetris tree, I don't really think that's going to happen. So probably a good change, but we don't know. Then the devs talk about some other stuff, like, for example, the introduction of guilds, which is very welcome. We've been asking for it for a long time, so that's going to be really cool. But the thing I'm the most hyped about is actually some of the quality of life improvements. The first thing is hover over, and this is something that people have been asking for forever. Now, this game originally started on mobile and then expanded to PC and now also Steam Deck. It will also come on consoles. So the thing is, hover over wasn't really implemented. So the game had UI problems at the start. It has kind of been fixed. There's still some stuff to do. It still looks kind of like bad in some areas, but hover over is just something you really need. When you have something on the ground, you don't want to have to pick it up and then see what it is. You can actually hover over and just not pick it up if you don't want to. Sounds very basic, but definitely a great change. Then we have Pact Spirit presets. Pact Spirits, that's basically like this other passive tree that you can customize with pets, and there are certain presets that you have against bosses or mapping. You want different pets in different situations, and now you can actually kind of save those outlines and you can select them with the press of a button. And since this used to be really cumbersome to have to change that around every single time whenever you face one of these crazy bosses, that is very much appreciated. Now, then we have recommended builds. This is basically made for new players to kind of get a little bit of a grasp of where the character could end up. Kind of like a mini build guide within the game so you don't get completely lost, which I think is a good idea as long as it's going to be changed over time whenever there's balance patches or whatnot. If it's not outdated, it should be a cool thing. The next thing that I didn't know I wanted until I heard it is actually replays. So apparently when you finish a map, you can now actually share that gameplay footage within the game with just a button press or something, which is incredible. And especially for content creators, that just sounds incredible. You could just share to somebody how your build looks while playing. Great idea, definitely gonna use it. Now then, as well as that, you can now view the whole profile of another player, which is basically like PoE Ninja within the game, which is really cool. Before you could only see the rough outline. But yeah, overall, I'm super happy that they implemented a lot of feedback that I gave them, Maxroll gave them, everybody on the sort of PC side gave them. Incredible how fast the response time is as well. But there's some things that I dislike. Let's talk about them. All right, so there's two things in this game that irk me right now. The first one is there's no co-op. You cannot play with your friends currently. And that is something they have on the agenda. They even said they want to do stuff like raids down the line. But when it comes to just playing with your friend, that is something I would have really expected them to get before the global launch. I think this will be sorely missed by quite a few people. For me, I don't really care. I'm usually playing solo. And you can trade in an auction house, don't get me wrong. It's not single player. It's completely global. Everything. It's not even like regional. But when it comes to just like randomly playing with somebody, that's just something that should be here in a modern ARPG. And I really hope they can implement this as fast as possible. The second problem, and that is a big problem for me, part monetization, also part progression, is drop pets. Now, if you don't know, pets is the last fortress of pay to win in this game, and that is basically this pet tree right here. Here's the thing. This game had a pretty rocky start with basically not really westernized monetization where you can mostly not really buy power. It had a lot of stuff that could buy power, but over time, they've really taken the feedback and dumbed that down to a very small portion. But pets are still remaining. Now, their stance on this is that at this point, they will leave this in the game. The pet system is going to be in the game. And mostly, I'm fine with that, simply because I personally will spend way less money on this than on PoE because stash types you can buy in-game, which I really appreciate. Plus, the power difference of the perfect pet versus the pet that you're going to have free to play is actually not that big of a deal. However, there's one exception, and that is drop pets. Don't get me wrong, you're going to get drop pets as a free-to-play player. You'll realize that really quickly. So it's not really about the monetization part. We kind of put that apart here. The progression is a problem. These pets do not get wiped per season, right? They're always there. They're like, you start the season with those. And here's the problem. Think about you starting right now, right? And at the end of the league, you're going to have the 3 drop pets that you want. Nice. Even if you don't pay, you're going to get them if you play enough. 100%. I did as well. However, what's going to happen is a year later, you're going to have really, really good pets because those accumulate over time. Every single season, you get new pets and they get better and better and better. And 1 year down the road, if at that point another player chooses to start the game, you'll have so much more drops than they do simply because now your pets are way bigger. And that is a huge problem in terms of getting new players into the game and not having them too disadvantaged. Because also on top of you getting more drops, now you have a year of experience. So now you also know all the tricks already. So it's just going to multiply. And the disparity between somebody who already played for a year and somebody who just started out is going to be way too big. Normal stats, I'm fine with. It's not that big of a deal if you look at it. But drop chance is just something that I wouldn't really do. There's also experience that you can get, which I think is personally fine. Whenever you restart the game and you play a new character, you get some extra XP. It's a little annoying for races, but what they usually do is they just let everybody make like a new account or a separate account where they don't have any pets. So that's fine. But drop chance for me is a no-no. But overall, I'm really happy about the changes. I will be streaming this game whenever it goes live. May 9th, 17 o'clock PDT. If you want to give the game a shot, check it out. It's in the description, free to play. Or just wait until you see me play it whenever it releases on launch. But with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.